This is happiness, to be everything at once. Be unblinded, be unlearned, be unbridled and unburned.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of Mood Prep. My name is Dave Nixon, and for today, over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to start peppering my parts of my book. So I'm deep in writing my book at the moment. For those of you that don't know, I worked with a company called Publishizer last year, which is similar to like a Kickstarter, but for authors. And so what they help you do is put together a campaign, and I had to write out a full chapter of the book, had to write out a synopsis, and then a video, and present it and sell as many copies as I could in a month. The more copies that I sold, pre-sold, the more publishers that I got put in front of. And so over the month, I ended up selling 313 copies, I believe. And I was put in front of a few publishers, and I got picked up, and I've since signed a contract with a publisher in Germany, so called Meyer Sport. So we're writing a book together, I suppose, is a way to consider it. But I'm deep writing a book. In fact, I've been in Adelaide the last 3 days writing here. But as I'm going through, obviously, there's a lot of things that are coming up for me, ideas and all sorts of stuff, and expanding on things that I definitely would have talked about in this podcast at some stage. And so what I'm going to do is pep it over the coming weeks, share some of those insights and into the podcast. And I'll also give you a heads up when it is something that's been either inspired from the book or is in the book or whatever. And today what we're going to talk about is life conditions. Now, one of the biggest things to pay attention to when it comes to life conditions is that if we aren't able to, let's say, take the rules and the beliefs that we have for our life, the frames, if you want to call them that, and allow them to have flexibility to the situation. So whatever's required of the current situation that's occurring in front of you or around you, the difficulty is that we then lack this ability to understand our true life conditions. And you can hear it when people go, I want to get back to my pre-baby weight or something like that. It's like, well, what's actually in that for you? What's really in that for you? Because the weight doesn't mean anything, because it's a number. So what do you think that number is going to give you? And the other thing is that your life conditions have changed. Are you trying to prove something to yourself or to someone else, or is there a self-worth thing going on here, an esteem thing? And this is really challenging questions, but they're actually really important questions, because what they can end up doing is freeing us just from the rubbish, the constant banter in our ears, or even not even our ears, like in our head, about where we should be and the pressure we should have, and what everyone else is doing, the comparisons that we may draw on other people, on other people, but even on ourselves. It's just a fact that what works for us at 20 and 30 and 40 just won't work at those same times. Like at 20, it's going to be different at 30. At 30, it's probably going to be different at 40, and so on and so forth. And this happens biologically as we age, but also because we have different priorities in life. We as humans, we might start to have kids. Even just having a dog this year has changed a massive amount of things for me. And it's a dog. It's different to a child, obviously, but there's still some heavy similarities. The key part of all that is that if we aren't sensitive to our life conditions and how to interact with those life conditions, and more importantly, respond to them, then we really miss out on having this long-term advantage of being flexible with every single situation that occurs. Now, there's things that underline that, like taking responsibility, complete ownership, being disciplined, and discipline does equal freedom, because when we're disciplined with things, we're free to do so many things. An easy example, if we're not disciplined with money, then we probably don't have the freedom to be able to not worry about work if we want to leave our job, or not be able to go on the long-term holidays that we want to go on, or buy the house and not have it paid off sooner. Like there's those sorts of things to pay attention to. When we're disciplined with food, and this is an interesting thing, and something that I talk about in the book as well, because it's important to get to a state, if you want long-term health, to not needing to be disciplined. It's just a part of what you do. And this is a really interesting thing, but for the lack of this conversation, for the sake of this conversation rather, I'm going to say discipline with food. We then have freedom to choose what we want to have. Now, when we're stuck in our dogma of what we're meant to eat, that's a really different situation. But when we have discipline around what we're eating, and it's inherently from this deep yearning of like, actually, I've just decided not to eat that, I'm eating this at this stage in my life, then that's a really different space to be in. But we can be disciplined, a disciple, right? Disciple, and is that a word? Disciple, and but to be a disciple of that idea of that doctrine. And a doctrine necessarily, I mean, I think in recent times it's almost got a bad rap, but it's not. It's just like, think of it like a set of principles that are governing a particular behavior that we have made a conscious decision to actually decide to do. And so with that, when we can have that doctrine rather than the doctrine having us, because when something like that, a set of rules and a set of principles has us, now we become a reductionist. Now we become blind. And what ends up happening is that we end up lacking this flexibility that truly being connected to a sensory acuity of our life conditions can actually give us. And this is the same thing. It's like on so many levels, right? Somebody comes into the gym and they're more tired. They've got more projects due at work. The kids aren't sleeping well. It's like straight away from my end, I'm going to be really conscious. If this person's a high achiever, I'm probably going to be continually having conversations with them and talking about, well, trying to get the conversation by asking questions down this path of, let's not fucking smash yourself in the gym. Because what a lot of people may be really interested in doing is that I can push through it, and I'm a high achiever in the back of their mind, and I can fucking deal with this, and they end up exercising themselves into an injury, which is actually just an external representation of what's going on in their life everywhere else. And it's even interesting because the body holds stress in different ways, and so if we're constantly under threat, the body's tight and it's ready and it's running cortisol to be able to deal with this constant threat, but the threat may never be happening because it's all in the mind. And it's a really quite fascinating thing. And the other thing about it, and this is one of the things that I pick up as a trainer in the gym, if somebody's complaining about back pain, it could be a whole range of reasons why. It's not just from fucking deadlifts last week, right? The thing about it, one of the key questions, if I'm gauging what state this individual's in and where they're at with their life conditions, just by asking questions and having sensory acuity with them and calibrating, what I'm actually doing is seeing if there's, has there been extra pressure at work? You don't know, potentially this person slept on the couch last night because they've got a struggle at home with their spouse that's they're struggling with, and they're not getting sleep. Now your hip flexor group of muscles, rather, not a hip flexor, although the psoas might be one of the worst ones for this what's it called, this criminal act on the body. Okay, I can't think of a word, but play along. That group of muscles is actually, more often than not, it responds to stress. It's an emotional muscle. Now think of the fetal position, or think of when somebody's stressed and they're feeling defeated, and they're sort of like their chest is kind of caved down a little bit, and they're heavy on their abdomen area. Like, these are all responses of, like, your hip flex is getting tighter and tighter as well. And so what ends up happening is that if we're constantly in this emotional state and hip flexors are tight, you may create some sort of some curvature in your lower spine, lordosis. But what also is potentially happening is that your psoas is actually pulling forward on your spine, which is causing this discomfort in your back. Now, there's a whole range of things that are actually occurring. It's not just a matter of trying to manage stress or trying to push through, because if we're not in tune with what our body is actually telling us and what is a continual safe amount of stress, and learning to say fucking no to things, what ends up happening is that we run ourselves into the ground, and then we're fucking no use to anyone. And so this ability to have this sensory acuity, to really truly be connected with what's going on, and the ability to go, you know what, I'm just going to pull back. I'm not going to train 4 or 5 times this week. And for the next couple of weeks, I'm just going to train 2 or 3. And when I go in there, I'm just going to do what I can and be okay with that, and give myself permission to be okay with that. And when we're in that space during really challenging times, we actually build this longevity and a longevity relationship with the gym and exercise and training. When we're just all or nothing, we're either or, then that can be really dangerous, because then we're either on the bandwagon or off it. I'm on a diet or I'm off it. And that's when people end up yo-yoing, because they're bouncing between either or. It's a process. It unravels. be kind to yourself around that process. And what that means is to give yourself permission to pull back and to push the foot down when it's necessary. And that's why it's so crucial to have life conditions as a factor in how you show up to the gym, but how you show up in life. And on that note, team, I am out. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you found this podcast beneficial, it would mean the world to me if you would also pass it on to someone else that you think would also find it beneficial. If you haven't already, jump on Facebook, search Mood Prep Online, join the group, join the discussion on there. I've got a Facebook Live in there this Sunday. Yeah, it is Sunday, 3 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time. I'd love to have you on there because it's a chance to actually interact and communicate about the different podcasts. I'll be talking about our book club, and I'll also be talking about the book that I'm writing and answering some questions around that. But on that note, I'm done. You know the deal. Until tomorrow, peace and pizza. Kick today in the dick. Slay the dragon. I'll see you soon.
to be everything at once, be unblinded.